Hello everyone. Let's check our connection. Can you see and hear me well? Okay, I'm getting some yeses in the chat. Great. Great. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let's establish a few ground rules because I've seen a lot of questions even before we started. So just to get it over with, the webinar is going to be 60 minutes. 50 minutes of me talking, and then you'll have a chance to ask your questions. You will get the recording within the 5 working days. So if you've registered for the webinar, but you don't have an opportunity to attend, or you need to run or leave earlier, don't worry, you will get the recording. It will be fine. And if you are experiencing any technical problems during the webinar, the best way to deal with that is just leave the room and then enter again or refresh the page. If that doesn't help, then my assistant will try to help you in the chat. So just let us know in the chat that you have troubles, and we will try to help you. Okay, so let's get to know each other. My name is Alexandra Sladkovskaya. I'm a leading methodologist and a course author at Skyeng School. I am a CELTA qualified teacher and teacher trainer, and I hold a master's degree in English language and literature, and I am language learning and language teaching aficionado. So today I'm talking to you from Lviv, Ukraine, and I would like to get to know you and see who I am speaking to today. So can you please put in the chat, where are you from and what do you do? Okay, I'm getting some answers. A lot of people from different parts of Russia. I can see a few Ukrainian cities. Paris. Oh, wow. That's cool. Okay, mostly teachers. I see Poland. Great. Okay, so many places, and some of them I haven't even heard of. That's so cool. Okay, thank you so much for spending this evening with me. I hope that I'll be useful today and you'll get a lot of useful information out of this webinar. Thank you so much. Great. So mostly I'm talking to teachers and I can see that from all over the place. So you know that our webinar is going to be about teaching reading. And well, that's obvious because you've signed up for it, and yeah, so you need it. That's why you came here. Before I reveal what exactly we are going to discuss, I would like to ask you a question. So you will see a poll in a moment, and you need to answer the question yes or no using the poll. So just let me start it. Okay, can you see the poll? Great. Okay. So can you please just answer honestly? Do your students like reading lessons? Like honestly. Okay. I will wait for a few more seconds to see what the results will be. Okay. Great. So I can see now that the majority answered no, and that's quite natural, I think. Yeah, most of them are not really big fans of that. Okay, but now can you please put in the chat? So if you answered no, or if you have students, at least like not all of them, but at least some of them who don't like reading, can you put in the chat the reason why do you think that happens? So why do they not like reading? In the chat. Why is that? Okay, they think it's boring. Okay. That's because they have digital generation. Well, we're teaching different students. Don't have the reason. Okay. Not interesting. Boring, boring, boring. Difficult. No motivation. Time consuming. A lot of unknown words. Okay. I can see a lot of, oh, they are not used to reading. Okay. A lot of interesting answers. But yeah, most of them not enough vocabulary, thus too difficult, too boring, and yeah, afraid of texts. Okay, okay, thank you very much. So we established that, yeah, even if some of our students are okay with reading lessons, some of them don't like it, and here are the reasons. So let's see what we're going to discuss today. Our plan for today is we will see why reading is challenging for our students and what can be done here. We will learn how to structure a reading lesson to make it easier and fun. We will practice doing some reading tasks together with you today and see why we need them and what the algorithm is. I will share different material ideas with you that might help you with your lessons. And we will see what a teacher can do and should learn to make their reading lessons effective and engaging for students. So without further ado, let's dive into that. And I forgot to mention one very important thing. If you have questions throughout the session, so you're listening to me and you have a question, please write it down in a special section, вопросы, in the right upper corner. And I will try, I'll do my best to answer most of the questions at the end of our webinar. Okay, so just don't write it down right away. Maybe you'll get an answer to that later in my speech, but just write it down not to forget. And don't write it in the chat because I may miss it and I won't pay attention to the chat while I'm speaking. Sorry. Okay. So most of my students also wince when they hear that we're going to have a reading lesson or that we are going to practice reading during the lesson. Well, at least it happens with all of my new students. And why does it happen and why is it so, what is so awful about reading that students don't like it so much? Very often, the problem is not with the reading itself, but usually the problem is with the student's previous experience. Especially with older learners, and I mainly teach adults, and that's where I specialize and what I'm mostly talking about today. With older learners, they don't like reading because they associate it with something difficult, boring, and unpleasant. However, it doesn't mean that they don't need it. Even if they came to you and they want to learn to speak in English, it doesn't mean that they don't need reading at all. Because reading is part of our life and we read all the time. If we don't read fiction, we still read for our job, we read for fun, for pleasure, we read to find out something, and so on. And our job as teachers of English is to teach reading skill together with the other skills. And also, that's important, we also need to teach it for the students' real life context. So, let's first focus on why reading is so difficult, boring, and unpleasant, as stated on this slide, and what can we do to change our students' minds and to help them with that. Okay. So, you mentioned a few of the ideas, and I established a few regions where problems might arise, and you can see them here on the slide. So, the most problems with reading arise because of issues with decoding, also connected with poor comprehension and connected with speed. So let's take the first one, issues with decoding. What kind of problems do you think might be here? And what is that exactly? And why does it happen? Do you have any ideas? Can you please put them in the chat? Okay, any ideas? I'll give you the answers, I promise. I just want you to think a bit and engage, okay? So what kind of problems? Okay, yeah. Here I can see a few answers. So, yeah, they might come across some difficult constructions, some difficult grammar structures which they are not familiar with, and that might really prevent them from doing the task. Okay, not understanding the words. Yeah, they may have actual reading difficulties like dyslexia, that's right. Okay, they may not understand the main idea. Yeah, definitely. Okay, thank you very much. Now, what about poor comprehension? What can go wrong here? So what may be the problem and why? What may cause the problem of poor comprehension? Yeah, they may be too tired, and that does not depend on how cool your lesson is, right? Yeah, again, words. Okay. Yeah, they might be overwhelmed with the text if the text is too difficult, for example, or they might be bored if the text is too easy. Cultural differences. Yeah. Okay. Right. What about speed? What kind of problems can be connected with speed? Yeah, lack of practices, and then, well, they read slowly, right? Not patient enough to understand the text. Okay. Okay. So let's cover these things very quickly. I'll give you the answers, like the problems in each category and some options how you can solve them. Okay. So the first issue was like issues with decoding, and the reasons for that is that they don't have the gist reading skill developed. They may have no knowledge of the topic, and that's why it may be difficult for them. And poor preparation. This concerns our part, yeah, how well we prepared them for reading. If they're not prepared well enough, they don't do things the way we want them to. What can be done? Work on all reading skills, and not only reading for detail or not only to answer some comprehension questions. And by work, I mean not test them, but actually help them and practice these skills and teach them how to apply um, different strategies of reading. You can also prepare students for the reading on a particular topic by brainstorming some ideas, by activating some knowledge that already have on the topic, maybe give some keywords, maybe give some information about the topic. If you know what you're going to read about, it will be much easier for you to read it and understand it, even if there are many new words. And yeah, background knowledge on the topic is great because especially if you work with adults, they all like they are grown up people and they have their own experience in life and they may know more on the topic than you, so use that knowledge and it's really going to help you. You need to set expectations, and this will help with decoding. Another problem was poor comprehension. So here some of you said that if they don't know the words, they won't be able to understand the text. Well, the problem is sometimes students know the words and know most of the words in the text, but still cannot do the task and cannot answer the question. And this is happening because when we read, there's a lot of things going on, and we don't only read like letters, put letters together in words and read them. We need to recognize words. We need to like actually find the right meaning of these words in this particular phrase. And you understand these things first at the phrase, then at the sentence, and then at the paragraph level. And yeah, vocabulary might be an issue, but not only this. Students may not be ready to put all these things together and like understand what the whole thing is about. Again, the reasons for that is the level of the text might be too difficult or too easy. The students may not know what to expect of the text, like if it's an unusual form, if it's not just like a story, but if it's some kind of form, they may not be ready for that. And also, if there was no pre-teaching stage, and if there are some blocking words, and by blocking words, I don't mean all new words in the text. I mean the words that really necessary for the student to do the task that you give them. So if this happens, then yeah, we have the problem. How to work with that? Choose the text wisely, but if the thing happens that you use a course book and there is a text that is too difficult for your student, that may happen even if the course book of the right level. Work with the task. So you can upgrade and downgrade the task to balance out the complexity of the text. Pre-teach some vocabulary if necessary, and also prepare students for reading. Again, preparation matters. Do not neglect it. And the last issue is with speed, and students who begin practicing reading in a foreign language, for them it's natural to read slowly. When we start reading in our own language, when we just learn to read, we read slowly. But some students, even those who have quite a good level of English, never learn to read quicker. And this might not be an issue if they are okay with that speed. But if they decide to take some exams, like, for example, IELTS academic, they face the problem that they can't do the task and they can't get the right points, not because they don't understand what the text is about, but because they don't have enough time to read the whole text, and they don't know that they can actually not read the whole text. So the reasons for that, again, undeveloped reading skills and strategies. So they may not be familiar with scanning skills and gist reading skills. When developing these skills, there might be wrong setup of reading activity. So if you give your task and you don't set a time limit, how will students know when to stop and what strategy they should use to do the given task? And again, as you mentioned in the chat, lack of practice. If you don't read, you won't read well. And again, it's difficult, but to learn to read well, you need to read a lot, even if it's difficult. So kind of a vicious circle. Again, solutions: work with all reading skills and set a time limit when you give the activity, and then check it with instruction checking questions. A time limit will indicate that this is not a detailed reading, for example, but if you give 1 minute, it will indicate for students that they need to apply a bit different strategy than reading from the beginning to the end. And do not skip reading practice in your lessons. I know that we have a lot of different things to do in the lesson, but don't skip reading, because for some students, your lessons are the only place where they can practice reading. They are lazy. They won't read. Some of them won't read outside the classroom. That's why don't deprive them of reading practice. As you can see, most of the problems lie in these categories of inefficient reading instruction, that is lesson planning, lack of knowledge about different ways of reading the text, and lack of practice. We will see today how to build a solid reading lesson, which will be balanced and help students enjoy the process, and you too, and what it should include, what activities you can use. So we will practice some of the activities together. Okay. So any chance? Well, I'm sure you know, but can you share in the chat what should a good reading lesson consist of? What are the stages or the parts that we really need to include in them? Is it only like read the text and do the task, or is it something else? Okay, some discussions, some pre-teaching vocabulary, okay. Pre-reading, while reading, post-reading, okay. Some warm-up, brainstorming some ideas, predicting, great. Okay, so you're absolutely right. A recipe for a good balanced reading lesson are these 3 parts: a pre-reading stage, a while reading stage, and post-reading stage. We will see what to do in each of these stages in a moment. So we started already giving ideas for pre-reading stage. So again, what can you do at the pre-reading stage before you actually read the text? Discuss some ideas, yeah. Get them interested in the topic. Some questions for leading, yeah. Maybe study some vocabulary, but yeah, it's questionable, okay. Yeah, mostly we discuss some things, right. So I'll share a few ideas for this stage and then we'll practice together. So what you can do at this stage, a good idea is to, well, why you need this stage is you need to make the process meaningful for your students so that they won't be bored. Yeah, and that's why we need to interest them in the topic and create the reason why they should read this text. You can activate their schemata. For example, if you read a text about education in Britain, you might start by discussing educational system in your student's country, ask a few questions about that, and then say that you're going to read a text about how it all works in Britain and compare the systems and so on. You can discuss students' personal experience. I'm sure that they have things to tell you, and they will find things to relate to in the text if they discuss that. For example, if you're going to read a story about a person who goes to live in another country, you can ask a student if they have lived in another country for at least a month. If they haven't, how they might feel in that situation, what challenges they might face, and so on. So again, you're asking some guiding questions, you're brainstorming some ideas. You can use such things as titles or headlines, photographs or pictures, some images, and so on to predict some things about the text. You can even ask them, like if you find some relevant set of relevant pictures for the text, you can ask them to place them in the most logical order and then read the text and check it. So this is also a great idea. You can use KWL strategy, and it's when we ask questions about text. So for example, ask them to come up with 3 questions they would like to find out about the topic of the text, and then after they read, they will check have they found answers to those questions or not. And yeah, pre-teaching blocking vocabulary, right. So now we will practice a pre-reading stage with you, and I've prepared a task for you. So we're going to read a text today, but before we do that, here's the task. You can see a title of the story and the picture taken from this story. So can you predict in the chat what the article is going to be about? So, what the article? Okay. Some sports, extreme sport, traveling, extreme cycling, competition, some, yeah, cycling and surviving it, yeah. Somebody's experience, okay. Extreme sports, some races, yeah. Challenges, outdoor activity, dangerous roads, Okay, great. Now, act as teachers now and say what helped you to do that. What helped you to predict these things? So where did you look? What like words or images did you exactly use for that? The picture mostly? Yeah, some words in the title, definitely. Okay. Uh, Great. Now, tell me, please, and now that you've done that, do you have any expectations of the text? So, are you ready? Like, do you think it will be easier for you to get into the topic later when you will see the text? Okay. Mm-hmm. Great. So keep your predictions in mind, okay? Because in a few moments, we are going to get to the while reading stage and you will have an opportunity to check those predictions, okay? Great, thank you. Now, what happens in a while reading stage? What do we do? Yeah, we do the actual reading. How many times do we read a text? Usually, like in a 45, 50-minute lesson. Twice? Okay. What do we do when we read the first time? What do you mean by gist? And what kind of comprehension? Okay, general idea. Check predictions. Yeah, that's a lazy way to set up the gist reading. Okay. No, specific idea is too specific to be the first one. Yeah. Okay. So here we go. While reading stage, we can practice reading, and here are the three basic ways or three basic types of reading we can do in the lesson. Always comes first gist reading or skimming. Then the second reading might be reading for specific information or scanning, or it might be reading for detail or for deeper comprehension. So these second types always come second. Yeah. Now there are speed reading tasks and more and slower tasks in the lesson. So speed reading tasks are skimming and scanning. They are considered to be speed reading tasks or speed reading activities because usually, not usually, they are done within a short time limit. It's 1 to 2 minutes, depending on your text, of course, and you don't get into more detail here. And these are essential skills students need to know, and these are the two skills that unfortunately are not very well developed in the students. Okay, so what can we skim in real life? If we talk about skimming or reading for gist. So this is a real life skill. We use it in our native language, in our foreign languages. Web pages, okay. No, we scan for dates and numbers. We can skim an article if we are not very interested in it now, but maybe we will be. Okay, I can see that here's some confusion between skimming and scanning. Okay, so in real life, we do skimming or we use skimming when we preview some information. So we look through our newsfeed on social media, not reading everything, but looking at some things. We can look through news stories before we decide to read them all. We can look through the article. We can look through the materials when you get ready for your lesson. You look through, you flip through things, and that's when you do skimming. So you're not sure if you need to like read it all or not, but you still look at some of the things. And a great example is when you, for example, you got an email and you need to realize, is it an urgent email or not? Is it something you need to respond to right away or not? And for that, you skim it, you don't read it all. But then if you find some information that, yeah, that's urgent and you need to answer that, that's when you do a more detailed reading. So ideas for reading for gist. Tasks, choose the best title for the text, or choose the best like title or headline for every paragraph. Choose the picture which summarizes the text. Check your predictions. And by the way, check your predictions is the easiest way to set up this activity. If you don't have a ready-made gist reading activity in your book, and most, can you hear me now? Hello? Can you hear me now? Great. Okay. Our platform decided to kick me out. I'm sorry for that. Good. So, where were we? Now we are going to practice reading for gist or skimming. And for that, I will give you a text for which you've done some predictions already. And here is the task. So you need to read the text and answer one question. Why is the road that you've seen in the picture, why is this road considered the most dangerous in the world? Okay? And for that you have 1 minute. When you give an instruction for gist reading, it's important to ask some ICQs. For example, do you need to read the whole text? No. For that task you don't. Do you need to understand every word? No. And how much time do you have? You have 1 minute to do that. Now, in the chat, you get the link and you have 1 minute to find the answer to this question. After that, come back and write it in the chat. Here is the text, the link to the text. Okay, I'm getting the first answers. Yeah. Right. Because of the number of accidents. Yeah. Right. Very well. Now, to answer this question, did you read the whole text? And did you need to, like, it's an easy text for teachers, but did you really need to understand all the words and all the minor details? Okay, great. Very well. So, right, the second thing you can do in the lesson is reading for specific information or scanning. Scanning, like some of you mentioned that this is what we do when we read the text the first time. No, it's not. It can be first. Scanning already like asks you to do something more specific, and for that you need the second reading. After skimming, you can do tasks like true or false, and You know that to mark sentences true or false is an activity for detailed reading. But if it has numbers, dates, or names in it, and the information you need to check and make like mark true or false is these numbers, dates, and names, it's actually a task for scanning, because first you find these numbers in the text, you check some information around them. If it's not for you, you move on and get to the next number, and so on. Find the year, date, number, very explicit one, or find the information about number, date, name. Find some specific words. This is all reading for specific information, and this is something that comes next. And again, we are going to practice with you, and we will need to answer some questions. So scanning is also a speed reading, so you will have 1 minute, okay, maybe 2, to mark these sentences true or false. Use the same text, and again, do you need to read the whole text for that? Most probably no. Do you need to understand every word? Again, no. And how much time do you have? Like, if you stated it in the instruction, you will have that. If you have questions, please put them in the right section, вопросы, and I will address it at the end of the webinar. So I'm waiting for your answers. Here's the text again for those who missed it. Okay, so let's check very quickly. I'm sorry if you didn't have time to do the task, you can try it out afterwards. So the first is true, the second and the third are false. Again, to do this activity, you most probably started by looking for the right number or the right word and then reading around it. So this was reading for specific information. What was the aim of this activity? So why would we do something like that? Why students need scanning skill? Paying attention to detail, okay. Yeah, because there's no time to read the whole text sometimes. To find very specific information, to save time at exams, exactly. Yes, and in real life, very often, if we need something and we find an article, most probably you won't have time to read it all. I don't know, if you need a very specific thing, you just scan for that thing, find it quickly, and then read around it for more detail. Okay, very well. And again, another thing, it can be reading for detail, but you've very well acquainted with this type of reading because this is the most represented type of activity in the textbooks, and most probably if you have only one activity for your text, it will be that, reading for detail. Okay, so then comes post-reading stage. So what do we do after we read the text a few times, 2 times at least? What do we do next and why? Any ideas? Discuss, ask some personal questions, okay. Relate to students' experience. Discuss to understand the text better. Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, so we need, after reading, we need to give the students an opportunity to respond to the topic of the text, to talk on this topic a bit, use probably some words that they learned, some active vocabulary. And this is where post-reading activity comes in handy. It's also the place where you personalize the topic of the text. Most often it's in the form of speaking, but it can be also in the form of writing, depends on your setup. What activities you can use, I won't explain them too much, but I'll just give you some ideas. It can be activity called reaction, when students say their reaction to the text, like by completing a list of sentences, like, for example, what I found the most interesting about the text was, what I found the most boring about the text was, and so on. So most irritating, most useful, most shocking, and so on and so forth. They react to the text. It can be a discussion. Everyone knows what that is. If the topic is quite controversial and if you have an opportunity, you can also set up a debate. It can be a comparison of experiences. So if students have some personal experience related to the text, they can compare their experience to the experience described in the text they've just read. They can be asked to rewrite the ending or continue the story if it's applicable, and so on. You will get the recording. So also a few more ideas. You can ask them to expand the text or reduce the text, transform it somehow, for example, to tell it from the point of view of some other character in the story, or from the third person perspective, from the first person perspective, and so on. They can be involved in creating a text quiz and then quiz their colleagues or each other, or if you have a one-on-one lesson, do it with the teacher. And it can be the last stage of KWL strategy. If you've chosen this strategy for your lesson, this is the time where you, for example, summarize the text and report everything you've learned on the topic. Okay, great. And a few more things today. So yeah, definitely, if you structure a lesson like that, it's more fulfilling, engaging. For your students, it's actually improving their skills, and it involves more skills into the lesson, not only reading, but also writing and speaking. And it's all good. Where to take resources for reading? So where do you take resources for reading, and where can you get them? Can you please put a few ideas in the chat? On the internet, TED Talk. TED Talk is a video. You're listening to that. You're not reading it. Okay. Allo is also a listening resource. Some articles. YouTube is with videos. We're talking about reading. Just reminding. Yes, BBC Learning, BBC News, British Council. Lots of articles, mostly from the internet. Some books. Okay. So for your lessons, you can use adapted materials, so something that you'll find in your textbooks. It can be semi-authentic materials. It can be authentic materials. So I won't stop on adapted materials. You know what they look like if you're using any textbook. What are semi-authentic material? So a semi-authentic material is something when they take the text, they adjust it a bit, but they make it easier to read, but actually it's in the same form it was when it was authentic. It's one way, or it's specially created for a particular level of learners, but it's created in a way that it seems to be authentic. For example, if you go to the British Council Learning English website, you will find reading texts for different levels, and if you check them out, you will see that they look like the actual text you might find in real life. But they are specially created for the purpose of practicing reading skills. So they are not existing outside this website, so to say. And you can also use authentic materials. And for authentic materials, you can use them with lower levels as well, not only with higher levels. But for that, remember golden rule: grade the task, not the text. If you decided to use an authentic text, of course you need to choose the one that won't completely overwhelm your students. But also, if you use an appropriate task with it, then it's going to work. Okay, so now how to remember all these things, and how to know what to include in your lessons, how to know which activities will work or not, and how to create this effective reading lesson to help your students develop the skills and not only test them. As the author of the course, I'm happy to present a new course from Skyeng School for you today. And this is a course on how to teach reading, dedicated to teaching reading skills. This is an online self-study course for English language teachers, which will help you with theory and practice of teaching reading as a communicative skill. And you can find out all the details about the course by following the link that my assistant will kindly put in the chat right now. So please, can we have a link to the course in the chat? So when writing the course, and before even starting writing the course, we try to establish what is important to know to teach reading as a communicative skill effectively, and to make this process fun and relevant to your students. And we found out that you need three things. You need to know three things: how to understand what type of reading a particular activity develops, and how to use it to your benefit, to your students' benefit; how to solve different problems with reading, and how to help students; and how to make a solid reading lesson from instructions to actual stages and planning. And these three questions turned into the three sections of our course that you can see here. So this is exactly what you're going to learn. When creating this course, we try to add more video examples of real lessons. You will actually see extracts from lessons and see how to apply it, and not only read about how to apply it. We made lists of activities with examples for each type of reading task that might be useful for you, for different types of tasks that you can actually take and use in your lessons right away. We try to make the material as practical as possible, so that the knowledge can be implemented in your classroom context right away, and not only after some time will pass. The most precious part of the course, from my point of view, is the analysis of video examples with the course author, thus me, lists of activities with examples for each type of reading, and also practice. And practice will be in the form of simulator, where you will go through all the stages of creating a reading lesson. And after doing so, you can use the actual plan you will create in your own lessons and see how it goes. And if you have any questions during the course about any of the methodological points we discussed, do not hesitate and ask, and I am happy to answer them and help you. So the course starts today. You can start it today if you wish, and sign up for that. And for those who participated in this webinar, there is a special price. You get a 10% discount if you enter the promo code webinar within the next 3 days after the webinar. So you can do that. Promo code in the chat. And upon successful completion of the course, you get the actual certificate, a standard certificate of advanced training from Russian Federation, which is valid in different educational places, so you can prove that you've actually learned something to your boss. And if you're interested, you can again find out all the information about the course by following the link, and my assistant will duplicate the link one more time now in the chat. So let's sum up and see. Reading canon should be taught communicatively, and to use the right materials, tasks and stages, the right setup of activities, and good preparation for reading. We need to understand what types of reading there are and how to practice them. In our course, we discuss 5 types of reading. Here today, we mentioned only 3. We need to be able to evaluate the activities we have in our course book, evaluate the text, and decide how to adjust it for our learners. And also be able to deal with some difficulties, and also be able to plan the activity around any reading material you wish. Of course, you can research it all on your own, but you can join our course and save a lot of time, because we read a lot of things on this topic, and we took only the most practical tips, and we made examples that are relevant especially for tutoring and teaching students one-on-one, but also we will share ideas that can be used in the group lessons, and you will see the actual examples. Now I'm ready to answer your questions, and if you have any, please put them in the right section, вопросы, and please, can we have a link in the chat, a link to the course in the chat again, so that people can find out the prices and all the minor details about the course. And I'm opening my link with questions to help you. Okay. So, organizational questions you will get if you sign up for the course, and upon successful completion you have an opportunity to get a certificate. But for the webinar there was no certificate stated, so no, for the webinar there won't be a certificate. What is blocking vocabulary? Blocking vocabulary is words that students may not know, and they need these words to answer the question in your task. So there might be a lot of new words in the text, but the blocking ones are only those that will prevent your students from doing the activity, from answering the questions. What is KWL? KWL is a learning strategy where K is know, L is learn, KWL, K know, W want to know, and L learned. Google it. It's a very useful strategy, not only for English lessons, but in general for studying. Students first make a set of things they know on the topic, then they make questions that they want to find out from a reading passage, then they check if the questions are answered or not, correct this thing, and then they report what they have learned by summarizing the text at the end. And this is a very nice no prep or low prep type of lesson you can do. Are reading skills and strategies automatically transferable from one language to another? This is actually a very good question, because most people think, and that's why like reading skills were not developed and were not paid so much attention in the past. People think that if students can read in their own language, they can transfer these skills into their second language or foreign language. It's actually some of the skills, yeah. So they know what a sentence is, what a paragraph is. They know how to read, yeah. So they know some of the stuff is automatically transferable, but some of the things are not. And these things concern uh, the development of different skills and strategies to reading, because we read in a foreign language in a bit different way as in our own language, and we pay attention to more things at the same time than when we read in our own language. And that's why the crucial problem is that in students' first language, there might be no skills to transfer into the second language. What to do then? Well, we need to develop these skills anyways in our lessons. Otherwise, like, they won't be successful in reading. Why giving true or false tasks with numbers? You cannot give them if you don't want to, but this is an example of scanning activity. And by doing scanning activity, you're training students to scan the text. And scanning is one of the most useful real life skills that your students definitely need. It's one of the way to develop these skills, that's all. How do we grade the task? For example, if the text is too difficult for your student, or if your student is too tired to read closely, you can make a question a bit easier for them by, for example, you can, if there are like 10 questions to answer, you can choose 5 which are more or less easy to answer, or you can give them some template for answers and things like that. So make up a bit different task that will be easier for them to complete. And on the contrary, if the text is too easy, you can make the task more difficult so that students have some challenge anyway. So any more questions about the reading, teaching reading? The discount of the course is 10%, and the promo code is webinar in English letters, big letters. It can be used within 3 days, so today and 2 more days. Don't see any more questions. Are there any more questions about teaching reading that you would like to ask, or that you asked but I missed and you really want them answered? No? Okay. Okay, that's a pity, but yeah, if you don't want to know anything else, then it's time for us to say our goodbyes. Thank you very much for joining me today for this session. I hope it was useful for you, and I really hope to see you on the course. It's very practical, and I'm sure that you'll benefit from that. My name is Alexandra Sladkovskaya again. Have a nice evening and good luck with your lessons. Enjoy teaching and thank you for learning how to teach with us. See you and bye-bye.